Hi, this is Pastor Tim. You might ask why I'm wearing this University of Kentucky shirt. Well, it's Wednesday night, and my trunk is the University of Kentucky, and these shirts are now replacing clerical collars and priestly robes as the holy dress of choice. Obviously, I'm just kidding. We're in this week's study guide, and we are talking about resident aliens. We're talking about government, civil responsibility, obeying the law, and we're looking at Romans 13, 1 through 10. And so let me just read that, and then we'll get into the questions. Today, I'm not going to answer the questions as much. I'm going to let you spend a little bit more time in answering the questions. But here we go, Romans 13. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. Did you get that? No authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authorities, rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but as also a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. And if honor, then honor. Maybe we should just let that part sink in for a moment. We live in a day when we do not respect and do not honor governmental leadership, and that is certainly going against what Paul is saying. Continuing in verse 8, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be are summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is a fulfillment of the law. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. What consequences will those who rebel against the government bring upon themselves? You can find that answer in verse 2. Again, if we rebel against the government, we will bring the power of the government upon ourselves. That would be, for some, it would be a fine. For some, it would be jail time. For some, in some places, and sometimes, it could even be execution. And we don't want the sword to come upon us, and so we obey the government. Question number 2. What should a Christian do to maintain a good relationship with the government? And you can find this in verses 3 and 4. Well, quite honestly, it's just very simple. Obey the law. When we obey the law that the government has set down, we avoid running into the government, and we honor God in obeying the law. Again, God has established this authority over us. Question number 3. For what reason are government officials in power? That's also found in verse 4. Well, we see here that the one in authority is there for our good. And so anarchy is not God's design. We're to have order and structure, honoring, and government. And this flows down from the very order that is given in the Godhead. And so we see then that God reigns over the world, and he has those in place to reign in secular positions as well. That is the government. Let's move right along. What motivation does the Christian have to submit to the government? You can find this in verse 5. 2 reasons. We don't want the consequences and the punishment that comes with disobeying. Secondly, we want to have a clear conscience. It's going to be very difficult to honor God if we're not honoring the government that he's established. This is the same principle we find in the 10 Commandments. We honor our parents, and that is a step to honoring God. Let's go to question number 5. What are governmental authorities? We find this in verse 6. Governmental authorities are defined as God's servants, whether they honor God or not. These are people placed in position to govern, They are there according to God's ordinance. They are not perfect. They are not flawless. Their judgments are not perfect. And so they are susceptible to error. Nonetheless, a bad government's better than no government at all. And so they're there, again, for our good. So they are also, many of them are full-time. This is what they do for their job. Therefore, it is only right that they be paid to do their job. Let's go on. Question number 6. How should a Christian respond to the tax laws and the requirements of the government? Again, this is found in verses 6 through 7. Well, Christians should pay their taxes. They should pay whatever fees. We're very fortunate that we get to vote and elect people who set these fees, but the ones who are in power and authority ought to be honored in how we pay taxes. If it becomes unfair or unacceptable, then we have the right to some kind of recourse. But in all, we're to pay our taxes, and we're to do what we're supposed to do when it comes to giving to that authority. Question number 7. This is very important. In addition to tax revenues, what does a Christian owe to his or her government? We paused earlier and we reflected on this. We are to give them either taxes or revenue, but also respect and honor. Let me just ask you, let's be really honest. How badly are you harming your Christian witness by your lack of respect for those in governmental authority? The lack of honor. It is very, very painful to see fellow Christians who constantly dog their government. Now listen, it is all right to take a political stand. It's actually something that we should do. But it's not all right to do so in a disrespectful or cruel way. And so we see so many examples of that. And today, especially with social media, it's very easy to hide behind our computers and to lash out. Friends, be careful. You are harming your witness, and you're dishonoring your God whenever you dishonor your government. So again, what I am not saying is that you have to agree with everything they do, but you do have to remember that they are God's people in place, and again, according to God's will. Question number 8. Under what circumstances should Christians disobey the clear commands of government? We can find this in verses 8 through 10. Well, we see that we are supposed to show honor to our neighbors. This is one of the great things about being a citizen. We respect our neighbors. We're very kind and gracious to those around us. We treat each other as we would want them to treat us. So we don't steal from stores. We don't rob from neighbors. We don't trespass on their property. But we do find that there would be times to disobey the civil government when it causes us, when it asks us to go against or commands us to go against our conscience and the clear teaching of scriptures. And so whenever the government says you cannot worship, or you must sacrifice a child, or you have to give money so that other people can sacrifice children, there are lines that we do not cross because we honor God above all. But having said that, we're reminded once again that Paul is writing this to the Romans, who has for their king Nero. And so, with that in mind, we take this very seriously. And the rebellion that we might have against government would be few and far between, based upon what Paul has written to the Romans. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you've enjoyed this study guide, and I pray that we would all be great citizens, reminding ourselves that as we go through this world, we're resident aliens. The kingdom that we belong to is not of this world. And so let us honor the authority God has placed above us while we're here, knowing that someday He'll be perfectly in authority over us in heaven. God bless.